Good evening and welcome to Encore, your weekly arts and entertainment show on Midlands 103 with Zoe Ryan just about sitting in for Claire O'Brien. As you can hear, I've been battling with a hoarse throat over the past few days, and by that I mean trying anything recommended to me to shift it, from cayenne pepper to the old reliable Manuka honey, and luckily they did enough to get me cleared for on air because, as they say, the show must go on. But I want to know what hacks you have up your sleeve. Send your recommendations on for getting rid of a hoarse throat to the Midlands 103 text line on 083 3010 103, and we'll go through those a little later on. On tonight's show, honouring your heritage through song, recognising your hobby can be a viable career, and caring for your voice. Offaly-raised Artist Sarah Fahey discusses her latest artistic venture and the revelations she made along the way. Westmeath-based vocal coach Emma Goulding will be giving us her top tips and tricks for looking after your vocal cords, something that will no doubt be of interest to you if you rely on your voice for work. And I don't just mean performing artists like singers and actors, barbers, teachers, receptionists, anyone who uses their voice every day in work. But first, Banagher are at it again. I'm joined now in studio by someone who is no stranger to this show. Historian James Scully from Banagher Brontë Group is here with me to tell me all about their upcoming event. James, you're very welcome onto the show this evening.
And thank you very much, Zoe. And it's always a pleasure to come into the Midlands Radio 3 studio.
And James, in the annual fashion, Banagher Brontë Group are celebrating 19th century novelist and poet Charlotte Bronte's birthday this month. But this year, you have something a little bit different in store.
Yes, we've been very lucky over the years. Since we were established in 2023, we've managed to have 4 or 5 events each year. Always one in mid-April, around the 21st of April for Charlotte's birthday. But this year it's Saturday, the 18th of April, 3:30 in Crank House in Banagher, and we have an absolutely superb musical event. Now, I'm going to try and describe this as best I can.
Try.
This presentation has been composed by 2 of our members, Michael O'Dowd and his wife, Christine.
Yes.
Now, Michael grew up in Roscommon, and he was immersed in music all his life. He was an obstetrician and gynaecologist in Portiuncula Hospital in Ballinasloe. But in 1982, he wrote his first musical entitled Assisi. And since that, he has written 5 other musicals based on the lives of the Franciscan missionaries of the Divine Motherhood, on St. Brendan the Navigator, on Vincent van Gogh, on Hank Williams, and on the Irish goddess, the Morrigan of the great legend, the Toan.
And did this all start just out of an interest? You said he used to be in a medical career.
Yes.
Right.
Michael's daughter went to the boarding school in Banagher,
yeah.
And I think every second weekend or so he would do the collection. So he used to often come to Banagher on the Friday evening or whatever.
Yeah.
And he took to strolling up to town, and there he found Arthur Bell Nicholls' grave. Now, Arthur Bell Nicholls was Charlotte Bronte's husband.
Yes, of course.
Charlotte was in Banagher for just a week. But,
Is that all?
And she was married to Arthur, but he spent 66 years of his 88 years living in Banagher, and most of them minding Bronte treasures, which he brought back from Haworth in Yorkshire. And that's the important part of the story.
They did spend a bit of time here together, though. As you said, it was only the week that Charlotte was here. Was that their honeymoon week then?
It was their honeymoon week. And she lived for another 9 months, dying in March 1855.
Because she did die very young.
She did die very young, and more than likely of tuberculosis rather than morning sickness or pregnancy illnesses. So that's another day's work.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
So back to the event then.
The event then will consist of a presentation of 10 originally professionally recorded songs. Okay? And reading on the notes I've described to Michael, Christine, his wife, will also be performing. And she was a professional musician performing internationally with her family, the Pattersons, in the 1960s and 70s. So these 2 people have great pedigree in the music world. Anyway, having married Michael, and with the music being their common language, they collaborated closely on many musical projects. And in this one, Michael wrote the music and the lyrics. Christine then arranged the pieces and brought them to recording studios, where she and other musician family and friends. So there's not just two performers in this. There's choral groups, there's orchestral pieces, and there's a great variety of songs. There's a waltz, a prayer, a lullaby, a trenchant, I think, almost pop song I would call it, where the Brontë girls declare that we are the Brontës and we're fiery and we're spirited. There's a blessing and there's a lament. So there's a great variety. And they are superbly recorded, and the backing, whether it's choral or orchestral or vocal, whatever, is just top class. Now, I've had the privilege of having a sneak preview of 4 or 5 of the songs.
Right.
And I found them, as I said to Michael and Christine this week, really terrific and sometimes overwhelming. So this is going to be a wow.
This seems like a massive undertaking. I know, as you said, you celebrate it every year, but this really does seem like a big step up, and such variety and so many different community groups engaged there. As you said, you didn't just go with one singer to do it all. There's even choral groups got involved.
There's choral groups. Michael and Christine have been working on this for 5 years.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Okay, so it just come to fruition.
Right.
I think just last Christmas when he realised, well, that's it.
We're doing
the
it
full
now.
suite of songs, and we'll keep it for Charlotte's birthday in Banagher. And we are really honoured to have the world premiere of this suite of songs. And I use the words world premiere because this is going to go far and wide. I have no doubt of that.
And as well as the collection being premiered next week on the 18th, you also have a number of different things happening. Like, for instance, you got some of the local schools involved.
Yes, it's a double event, and I repeat, Saturday afternoon, the 18th, 3:30. We will have Michael's and Christine's piece of music titled The Brontës Love and Honour at 3:30. And this will be followed by a miscellany for Charlotte's birthday, where we will have local writers, mostly from our group, reading their original creative writings, whether it's poetry or prose, and we will also have some children from the 6th class in St. Ryan's Primary School. Wow. To facilitate this, 2 of our members, Frances Browner and Eileen Casey, poets and novelists and writers of note, have facilitated 2 creative writing sessions in Charlotte's Way. Charlotte's Way is where Arthur Bell Nichols lived for 45 years when he returned from Yorkshire. And it is now a really well-appointed guest house run by our secretary, Nicola Daly. So that's our venue for a lot of events, and obviously it's part of the story. A
really well-rounded event by the sounds of it. You really thought of so much for it, as you said, to honour and pay tribute to Brontë. But I suppose, as I said, James, this is not your first time on the show, so I'm sure you've told this story many times. But for anyone who's not heard it before, how was it that you got involved with this, being involved with the group? And obviously, as a historian yourself, you must have an interest in the Brontë story.
Yes, I suppose it was when I retired, which is unbelievably 14 years ago now. I had more time, and I began to read up the biographies of Arthur. And he was the Banagher man. He was the Banagher man. 66 years of his 88 years lived in Banagher. And when he returned from Yorkshire after Mr. Bronte's death in 1861, this was 7 years after Charlotte had died, but he remained on minding Mr. Brontë, all of whose 6 children had predeceased him. All of them. 5 girls and 1 boy. Okay. But he was there when Mr. Brontë, the last of the family, died in 1861, and he's expected, I suppose, to succeed him as the rector or the perpetual curate, but he didn't. So he left. He was very disillusioned with the church over there after that, and he returned to Banagher bringing an incredible collection of Brontë treasures. First editions, manuscripts, portraits, the dog, the maid, the grandfather clock, the shotgun, the wedding dress, and these were all in Charlotte's Way or Hill House in Banagher from 1861 until after Arthur's death in 1906. And do we know where they are now? Arthur married again to his first cousin,
Right.
once removed, or step first cousin, something like that, called Mariana. He married her after 3 years. And she tolerated Hill House, Charlotte's Way, being a shrine
Okay,
to the Brontës.
right. Not something a
During
new
that
wife wants to
45
do.
No. She was extremely understanding. The marriage was one, I think, of compassion, convenience, and companionship.
Right.
But they did live together, and they were very happy in those 45 years. But the house was full of Brontë treasures. After Arthur died in 1906, there were 3 auctions, which I think Mariana brought about, and a lot of the treasures in Banagher were sold through Sotheby's in London and through other means to Brontë collectors, and they made their way back to the very rooms where they had come from in 1861. And if Arthur hadn't protected them, he was very protective of Charlotte's reputation. He was very protective of the manuscripts and the first editions and so on. He was very protective of her writing. So that helped to save them, the great portraits and so on. But they've made their way back to London now and to Haworth in Yorkshire.
Fascinating, isn't it? Don't go anywhere though, because after this we're going to have more on Brontë.
Midlands 103.
It is Encore on Midlands 103, where we have just been talking about Bronte's legacy in Banagher with Offaly historian James Scully. Now, it's also a moment where in between the break there, Joe Cooney's after very kindly running in and giving me a fisherman's friend. So perhaps that's an indication that my voice is not quite as far along in the healing process as I'd hope it would. But thank you very much, Joe. The fisherman's friend will be taken very shortly. Now, James, it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another to hear the music. You are giving us a little exclusive preview this evening with the permission of composer Michael O'Dowd. Which of the tracks from the collection have you decided to grace our ears with tonight?
We're going to listen to Charlotte's Way, and it evokes that moment during Charlotte's honeymoon when she would have walked from Cuba House, roughly where the St. Ryan's hurling pitch is now, across the hill of Banagher to St. Paul's Church. And it's as Michael says, he describes her as walking the hallowed ground while the bells of Banagher ring out. And she is, I think, we can say with certainty that from the letters she wrote during her honeymoon that she was, this was one of the happiest times of her life.
Well, let's have a listen.
Yeah.
Seem to unfortunately be having a little bit of trouble with that audio track playing out for us there. But you mentioned that this was Charlotte's Way, James. And I know that throughout tonight's discussion, when we've been talking about Brontë, Charlotte's Way has been mentioned quite a bit. So it is very suiting that a song would be composed for this.
Yes, and it's not, as I've mentioned, the Hill House is now called Charlotte's Way, and it's a very well appointed B&B. But the idea in this title, it's Charlotte's Walk from Cuba House, across the hill of Banagher to St. Paul's Church for Sunday service.
We're going to give Charlotte's Way another try now, James, and see if we can get it. This is the Beauty Alive Radio. James, that really was a very uplifting song, and just listening to the lyrics, it's mad to think the impact that someone had in just a week. I know that obviously Charlotte Brontë was a novelist and she made some fantastic pieces, Jane Eyre, that live on today. But this was specifically about Charlotte's Way. So for it to have that impact after just a week of being there. Yes,
I think it's terrific. And I mean, the quality of the lyrics, the choral, the orchestral backing, and the singing is just wonderful.
And that was Christine O'Dowd herself. That's Michael, the composer's wife.
Yes. She's still a great singer, and a great Michael and Christine have been great supporters of the Brontë Group. Indeed, long before our establishment. So that gives you a good idea of the quality of the music and the singing that's going to be presented. There will be 10 songs, and we're also are publishing a deluxe souvenir programme, which Michael has worked on himself, and also we are benefiting from the unique creativity of the Brosnan Press in Ferban. So that will be a souvenir which will be available at the weekend. And don't forget part 2, the miscellany for
Yes.
Charlotte with the members of the group and members of the public, and of course the school children from St. Vitus National School with their teacher, Miss Michaela Keenahan, will read their pieces. And by the way, if you're a reader of Ireland's Own, and who isn't, the issue for next week, but it's out this week, dated the 17th of April, has a wonderful article by Eileen Casey, one of our creative writers, on the Banagher Brontë Group. 3 great pages with 4 lovely photographs. So that's it, really. The double event, Saturday the 18th, 3:30 in Crankhouse, Lower Main Street. Come early to avoid disappointment.
And James, is it a case that the group is open for new members? Can people who are interested now and say, I'd love to get involved?
Yes. I think we are online. You'll get us under Banagher Brontë Group. And I'm just having in my phone here now, just finished off today by another great member, Shawnee Regan and his wife Maeve, 2 great supporters also from Selbridge. And that newsletter will be going out, 7-page newsletter with lovely illustrations, and that will be going out to all members and supporters tomorrow or the day after.
Fantastic, James. Best of luck with the event. Obviously, a lot has gone into this. As you said, this has been years in the making for this particular event, and you do run multiple events throughout the year.
Yes.
So if someone isn't able to make it along to this one, they can obviously, can they access the songs outside of the event?
Yes,
I know you
they'll
said
be going up on they'll be going up on Spotify and other music platforms, maybe on Charlotte's birthday, which would be next Monday.
Fantastic.
Okay, and there will be the video. There are, of course, I forgot to forget, magnificent video productions accompanying the song, and the illustrations are well. When you see them, you'll believe me. They're also fantastic altogether.
James, it has been a pleasure.
Okay, right. Thank you very much, Zoe. Okay.
And a reminder that all 10 tracks will be premiered on Saturday, as James said, April 18th in Crankhouse on the Main Street in Banagher, and proceedings get underway from 3:30. Up next, Offaly artist Sarah Fahey discusses the struggles of dedicating to your art.
Midlands 103.
You are listening to Encore with a slightly huskier version of Zoe Ryan in the presenter's chair tonight, courtesy of a hoarse throat. And speaking of, keep texting in your hoarse throat remedies to 083 3010 103. We'll be looking at those shortly. But before that, earlier this week, on the back of her launching her new website to showcase her illustration work, I ventured up to Dublin to visit Tullamore-born artist Sarah Fahey in her studio space for a cup of tea and a chat. So Sarah, you only last week launched your illustration platform. Tell me why now? Why is it the time that you've decided to do this?
Well, eventually I realised I'm going to have to just sit down and do it, because like anyone with a passion or a dream or even just a hobby outside of it, it's all well and good to have it up in your head, but actually to put a pen to the page or to type up a novel or to do anything, it just needs to begin now. And why now? I wanted to do it, let's say 2 months ago. And then the time kept ticking on. And eventually, I don't even know if it was just courage or if I just looked at the clock and looked at the date and said, maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe I could actually put myself online and show my artwork to the world. And I realised even if I never am able to make a mortgage out of illustration, for example, it's something that I have inside of me that I want to do all the time, and I don't know if I'll ever be happy doing anything else. And if I have to stock shelves to support it, if I have to be a Deliveroo driver, whatever it takes, because it's something that is within me that needs to get out.
So what would your advice be to someone who's maybe listening and thinking, yeah, I really want to do something and I want to get started? What would your advice be as someone who's gone through it now and you've done it, you've put the time in and you've launched the platform? What would you say to people who are thinking about doing it?
I would say 2 things. One is to be kind to yourself. You need to allow yourself the chance to do it, because a lot of the times, and something I had to come to grips with, why am I actually putting this off? You know, there's all these reasons where you go, oh, actually, I don't have the time, or like that, I'm just nervous, or maybe, well, actually, what if you're just afraid to start because you think, oh, I can't do this thing that I want to do. And that's it. Maybe there's no deeper reason. You're just afraid to start because it's going to bring you joy and you feel maybe, oh, I don't deserve that. Oh, I'm not good enough for that. Oh, I don't know. It's about your expression of joy to the world. It doesn't matter how good or bad it is. People just want to see you putting yourself out there. And the second thing is, don't be afraid of making mistakes along the way, because you will make mistakes. It's inevitable. Your standards of perfectionism are in your head to, in one way, keep you safe, as in, oh, I know exactly what I need to do to get it, so that's what I need to do. But for someone else, that actually might be holding them back. And it's a trapping of your own making. So sometimes goals are good, but recognize, are you actually putting things off because you're creating an impossible goal for yourself? Or are you actually just maybe afraid to start and you just need a little push? And what can give you the push?
What was it that gave you the push? You said it took months of planning before, like, you know, we all saw this last week launching on social media and said this is great, and we all had a great time perusing through all your art and illustrations. But you said that was months ago that I made this decision. So what was it back then that gave you the push to make the decision, to say, do you know what, I've been thinking about this for years and I'm going to do it?
Yeah. Two things. I keep saying two things, like as if I have them in my head already pre-planned. Honestly, I wanted to do it, but I always felt, it's coming up to, let's say, New Year's. No, I'm going to wait a bit longer. Oh no, it's coming up to this event. No, I'm going to wait. Or I remember, for example, St. Patrick's Day. I made a big illustration for St. Patrick's Day, but then around that time, I actually didn't get enough time I had the illustration finished. I didn't have enough time to, in my own head, prepare for posting it. And I realised this is a habit that I'm having, that I've always had, of pushing things away. And I struggle starting something. Not because I'm afraid to do it. It's just starting out means committing to something big. And especially when it's something you really, really want inside, that's very hard. So what I did was, I turned to my partner and I said, right, I want you to sit beside me and I'm going to post this. Do your own thing. Watch telly. Do what you need to do. I'm just going to do that because that's all I needed. Sometimes it's good to have other people hold you accountable, but for some people they can feel very like they're in school. It's really difficult because when it's like outside of your work hours, for example, and it's like a hobby, well, it's very easy to forget about it. It's so easy to, sure, I'll just watch Netflix. Sure, I'll just go out with friends tonight instead of doing this thing. But sometimes letting other people know, I am going to do this thing. And that can be a bit of a guilt factor. I don't know if it's the Irish Catholic guilt coming in, but it's very much, that has helped me.
You keep referring to your art as a hobby. And I know for a lot of people, maybe they have hobbies and they consider art as a hobby, but you went to college, you studied animation. And for anyone else who studies something in college, I speak about this so often where I'm like, you go to college to be a teacher, you go to college to be a medical professional, you come out of it being a teacher and a doctor. For those of us who study the non-traditional routes, like myself, studying media, sometimes you come out and people go, that's a nice hobby, but what are you going to do for a career? And I know that the art world, you get that a lot. Do you think, is it that you're only allowing yourself to see it as a viable career now?
Yeah, absolutely. Nail on the head. When you have an industry that's very contract based, you'll work for a few months, then not work. It's tough when you're out of work then and trying to get back work again. And then when you are like that, not working in that industry, you realise, wait, maybe this isn't viable. Maybe this isn't a career. So what are my other options? It is difficult to actually put your feet down and say, no, it doesn't matter if it's difficult. This is what I want. And when you want something, sometimes doesn't mean you're going to get it. Doesn't mean it's going to work out. But putting your feet down and saying you tried, that's something that I'm doing now.
Let's get down to the creative. Talk me through your creative process. We're in a very privileged position today that we are sitting in your beautiful studio here up in Dublin. The sun is shining in at us. You have a window in front of you that no doubt you use for inspiration. But talk me through your setup. What's here before us? What are these instruments that you're using? Because I suppose the first thing to point out is a lot of people picture illustration, animation, pen and paper. That's not the way anymore. There's a lot of devices sitting here in front of us. So talk me through the setup.
So absolutely. Pen and paper is, for me, king. It's the best, 10 out of 10. But there is a lot of other options you can do to enhance that work. So what is before me is, we're on my desk, very big desk, IKEA built, and I have my computer, which is a laptop, and attached to this large cable is a Cintiq. What this is, it's essentially a giant iPad. I want you to think of an iPad, and I have a pen. It doubles as a second screen for my laptop. And what that means is I can draw onto it. It's touch sensitive, like an iPad, but I am able to use a pen. So a connecting pen that I can draw on. I have several different softwares that I can use for different bits of art. It depends on what people would want me to do, or depends on what I'm creating. If I'm creating like a tiny little animation for someone's website or for social media for myself, I will use this program, which, for example, is TV Paint. And that's a hand-drawn animation. And what I mean is, basically, I'll use this pen and I'll draw it by hand. When people hear hand-drawn, understandably, people think pen and paper. But a lot of the times, if you use pen and paper to create a drawing or an animation, which is hundreds of drawings, you then have to digitally go in, take photos of every single drawing you've made on paper, and then you have to colour it in, clean it up if you've made mistakes, and that takes hours of work extra. Whereas if you use something like this Cintiq, where you are just drawing on the screen, essentially creating it right there, that saves a lot of hours of work. I have lots of other sketches that I have done. I can show you, I can give you a sneak peek.
Where would your inspirations typically come from? In that first illustration or sketch that you showed me there, it clearly, from the graphics and the writing you had in, I can tell that you were inspired by a scene on the Lewis, one of the public transport options up in Dublin. So where would your inspirations typically be from?
That is a great question. I'm constantly drawing from the world around me. For example, I'm showing Zoe here, like this is just images from my sketchbook. And when I say sketchbook, I have a little book and I bring it out with me on public transport when I could be scrolling on my phone, but instead I'm drawing. And I'll just draw people around me, looking at how people stand, looking at how they're dressed, looking at fun expressions, and seeing the weirdness in people. Just thinking outside the box and being a bit silly. I've always been silly. I've always been... You're smiling. Yep. And I've always been silly. I've always had a penchant for being fun and just making fun art. And I think that's what I enjoy. For example, one of my favourite... Now, this is aimed for like a children's book. I want you to imagine an Irish countryside with a little yellow car and a granny driving in the car, speeding at like 1,000,000 miles an hour, and probably Zoe actually, like a reporter, is on the roof of the car, clutching to it, trying to report on this clearly old woman who has ran away from the law. And behind this reporter is two cars speeding along with microphones and cameras, and like that's just a silly scene of like, what has this old woman done? Why are they recording this woman? What's going on? That's just ridiculous. And I think, I mean, artwork, yes, it can be Caravaggio, it can be so many things, beautiful, amazing artwork, but also artwork is also silly little illustrations like this. And I think I am at a very unique time in life where, because being an artist means you have to compete with computer generated images like AI images, which have been trained from artists like myself. So essentially a computer looks through the millions of images that I have put online in order to get work. They will use their computer brains to analyse it and then recreate artwork using the style that I have made. And A lot of people have asked me, like, how do I feel about that? Obviously, I don't feel great, but I think it's more important for me to just keep doing what I'm doing and not let that get me down too much, because when you learn about the nuances of art and when you learn about when you actually have the vocabulary of what makes good art versus bad art, for me, I can put two bits of artwork in front of you. One is AI and one isn't. And 90% of the time, people will prefer the not AI one, but they won't know why. They won't have the vocabulary to say, oh, I prefer this, but I'll know why. And I can talk about, contrasting lines. I can talk about texture, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. I think there is always going to be a place in the world for artists and creatives. And even if it isn't like that, a full-time job or career, there still is a desire and a belief that you can do this. And hopefully I can make it to, like you said, not have it as a hobby. Like, I have to stop referring it to that and actually make it a full-time viable career.
And you can check out Sarah's what can only be described as delightful work on her website, sarahfaheyillustration.com. That's Sarah with a H and Fahey with an EY. She's also across all your usual social media platforms under the same name, Sarah Fahey Illustration. Still to come, have you ever gotten a hoarse throat and, like me, didn't know why? Well, if so, this next one's for you.
Midlands 103.
We are into the final segment of Encore tonight with myself, Zoe Ryan, sounding a little bit deeper than usual. Now, you may be thinking, this is not the first time this has happened, and you would be right. I fell victim to the same thing earlier this year, and the strangest thing about that was it seemed to have come out of nowhere, same as this time, not as a result of excessive screaming or roaring, the most common culprit. So once I'd gotten over that bout, the journalist in me went about investigating it for a segment on Midlands Today, which you can listen back to on the podcast section should you wish to. And I spoke with a local speech and language therapist, Kate Griffin, about the causes and aggravators of a hoarse throat, including tea, to my shock. But I also reached out to a voice coach, and here is how that went. I'm joined now by Emma Goulding of Emma G Vocals, who is a vocal coach based in Westmeath. Emma, thank you so much for joining me on the show this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Emma, the topic of discussion this evening has been, in the wake of me having a horrific hoarse throat, it got me thinking that people like myself who would use their voice for a living, performers of all different backgrounds, whether it be in the arts area or equally if you're a teacher, if you're a lecturer, you're really heavily focusing on your voice. And it just got me thinking, surely I should be doing things to maybe help myself that I prevent or at least stop as often getting these hoarse throats. Like we're very accustomed to the likes of singers and actors. We'll see them doing their warm-ups. I will admit that I have been presenting and hosting events for the past 10 years and I do not do anything like that, but I think I should. But you're the expert on it. So tell me, what could I be doing or what should I be doing in my line of work to protect my voice, I suppose, and avoid getting this hoarse throat?
I suppose the first thing is, if you feel that you are getting a hoarse throat, my first piece of advice would be vocal rest. You should always stop if you're in pain, specifically if you're overcoming from a sore throat, say flu or a cold. But that would just be my professional opinion. Now, if it's a case that you do have, say, an important gig or a show, or like yourself, you're presenting a radio show coming up, maybe if you can look into doing a vow of silence, say the night before, and speaking as little as possible and as much hydration as possible. So the likes of your hot teas, water would really, really help in just lubricating your voice and your vocal cords as well. I'd also look at maybe Manuka honey. Manuka honey is brilliant, has really good, excellent antioxidants.
Yes.
Really good healing properties. The glucose as well, which is basically sugar, that will have really good soothing effects on the throat. Same with the likes of your lozenges. So I use vocal zones. They're very good. Strepsils are very good. They have a good numbing agent, but I wouldn't be clutching for them frequently. Even the likes of your hard sweets, like even a bag, you can buy them in Dunn's, Aldi or Lidl. Again, the glucose syrup that will be in them will kind of add that hydrating, kind of soothing effect to your voice. They'd be brilliant as well.
And tell me again, what is the name of the lozenger that you'd recommended? I've never heard of those.
They're called vocal zones. So you can pick them up in any kind of local pharmacy, McGorrick's, Boots.
Yeah.
They have a few different flavour variations, but they wouldn't have that numbing agent. So you can kind of take them more frequently rather than Strepsils. Strepsils, you could kind of take them, I guess, if you've laryngitis, tonsillitis. or if you're in a real clutch, but they're not good to be taking for a prolonged term of time just because of the numbing agents in them.
And as I said there, the likes of singers and actors, we would regularly see that they would do their vocal warm-ups. So what type of vocal warm-ups could people who like that use their voice for the profession be doing either ahead of a performance, or is there things that we should be doing just kind of every day? Like I've heard about humming in the shower.
Yeah, there's very good ones. So the likes of your lip trill, your humming, even singing through a straw is a great one through water. It's like a nice kind of vocal massage on your vocal cords because you're causing that vibration in your vocal cords. They can be really good. But you've the likes of your vocal warm-up, which is, like you said, your humming, your lip trills. Then you could kind of do, if you have a piano nearby, even the likes of YouTube have very good vocal scales that you can kind of go through. They'd be very good as well. And then the likes of your cool down, you kind of go back to your SOVTs, which is your semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, which is your lip trills and your humming. And that kind of just relaxes the voice after you've had, say, a heavy gig or a performance.
So those are the kind of home remedies or steps that you can be taking to try and avoid getting a hoarse throat. But what about when it comes to if you actually have one? What would you recommend there? You said about trying to take this kind of vow of silence, which I know personally I would really struggle with. Outside of that, what else could you be trying to do?
Use the likes of a nebulizer. Now, you could pick up one of these, say, in your boots, even on Amazon. It's basically a vocal steamer that kind of targets your throat and your vocal cords. And again, that will work on kind of lining your vocal cords and your throat with hydration in an intense kind of way. That's very good. If you can't get your hands on, say, the likes of a nebulizer, even just putting your face over a pot of hot steaming water, a towel over your head, even just steaming, even the likes of, say, you have a sinus infection, that kind of sinus drip can really affect your voice and can cause that kind of irritation, sore throat and hoarseness as well. So that's a very good option as well.
That is something that Kate was really heavily focusing on as well there that we just heard, is about the hydrating, about keeping the vocal cords hydrated. And her recommendation was the best thing really is water, because a lot of the other drinks that we could be reaching for, your caffeinated drinks, whether that's like your stereotypical coffees, teas, your fizzy drinks, they're just stripping the vocal cords.
Absolutely. They can kind of dry out your voice. People as well, they could gravitate towards the likes of eucalyptus or mint tea without actually realising they can actually dry out your voice as well. Even, you probably know yourself, if you have a chewing gum, you got that lovely kind of fresh breath or like that sense, but it's actually drying out your throat. So it's actually best as well to avoid the likes of your mint teas, your eucalyptus teas as well. If you do feel like you're getting a dryness, try and avoid them and go more for your lemon and ginger teas or your honey.
Yeah, I'm completely lost now, because like that, I would always like to have a hot drink before coming on air, just to kind of do that, obviously unknown to myself, lubricating the vocal cords and the throat, keeping it moist. And after speaking with Kate earlier on today, I was like, do you know what, I'm not making a tea. I'm going to bring in a herbal tea, thinking to myself, because it's not caffeinated. And now you're after saying that certain herbal teas, even if they don't have caffeine, they're not the ones to reach for either.
You can have the likes of your chamomile tea. Like there are other, like green tea is excellent. It's more just the mint teas I personally would avoid if you do have, say, a dry or sore throat, because it is going to irritate it that little bit more.
Sure. And Emma, tell us a little bit about yourself. Why was it that you decided to start up this business and to become a vocal coach?
I suppose I've always had an interest in singing. I've kind of been in and out of stage schools and singing lessons my whole life.
Yeah.
I studied in BIM up in Dublin, and I'd done the 4-year vocal course up there, along with the extra added on year in Kylemore College in audio engineering. And I've just always had an interest in the voice, really. And after I finished my grades, I was fully prepared and ready to kind of go and help people with their exams. And yeah, I'm also a music educator with Music Generation. So I work in the primary schools. We do a lot of choir stuff. We have Sing Fest and everything like that coming up now in May. And yeah, I've just had a passion for singing my whole life, really.
Fantastic. It's something that I've learned today, and I know because this is an art show, we're always highlighting the talents of people and how they use their voice and their body and everything as performers. But sometimes I feel like we do take our voice for granted. Even when Kate was going through how the voice works, I don't think we always stop to think how amazing this process is. It's as simple as breathing to us, but it's when it's not as simple as breathing that we actually just stop and think about it. So it is a fascinating line of work. I'm in no way surprised that you deviated gravitated towards it. As I said, I found a new appreciating after speaking to yourself and Kate on it today. But Emma, if people want to know more about yourself and to maybe avail of your services, where can they find out more about you?
You could find me on Instagram. My title is Emma G Vocals, and if you'd like to book in for a lesson, no problem at all. Just shoot me a text.
I, for one, feel like I have been taking my voice for granted, and it's the way with anything, isn't it? Whenever you've any sort of an ailment, whether it's a cold or a flu, you're going, I didn't realise how good it was to just breathe naturally. But when I say to you that I have been following Emma's recommendations religiously since waking up on Monday morning with this hoarse throat, I mean religiously. And they have been serving me very well. From your texts that have been coming in, a lot of people are recommending, just as Emma did, about the steam. I did actually manage to get my hands on a little steam inhaler. It's a handheld one. Now you can get a nebulizer, but what I did on Monday morning was straight away went into the shower and literally hotboxed the shower room. There was steam everywhere. I know that my mother, I could hear her screaming in my head going, oh my God, open the window, about the walls and everything getting covered in the steam. But that was my kind of home remedy version of a steamer. Then I hit the town and I said I'm going to look into nebulizers versus steamers and the price of a nebulizer. So I just said to myself, I would try the little handheld steamer, picked it up in one of the local pharmacies. It was only $5.99. I said, I'll see how it goes. And if I find like this is working, then I might invest in a nebulizer of sorts. Also seeing that gargling salt and water, that's a big favourite coming in here. I was doing that. I actually added a little bit of black pepper as well. My dad always used to swear that if you put a bit of black pepper in, more so for infection, that it gets rid of it. So I was doing that. Sucking lozenges. Yes, I have tried, I think, every lozenger on the market. I did try those ones that Emma had mentioned. I hadn't heard of them before. The vocal zones. Now, what I will say about them is they come in a couple of different flavours. There's the original, which was the one I went for because I said, look, may as well go for the original. They also had it in, I think it was a lemon and honey and a blackcurrant. And my advice to you would be, they're good, but go for one of the flavoured ones. I found it was a bit tough now to stick through the original. I can't even describe the taste of it, but it was a little bit pungent, to say the least. One that I picked up in another pharmacy who, when I first went in looking for these vocal zones and they didn't have them, they had recommended to me this Jello Revoice. That one I did preference. Now, I don't know if there was actually an original of that. I opted for the cherry version and I found that one to be a little bit better for me. Maybe it was just the flavour that was putting me off the vocal zone ones, but with the Jello Revoice one, it's nearly like a little fizzy tablet that kind of dissolves on your tongue and this gel type substance starts making its way down your throat. So highly would recommend those. A little bit pricey, €10 price point. But you know what? Before I came on air, I had tried these ones that were in the back of the cupboard that I hadn't used yet from Zarbee's. They're a cooling throat and immune support lozenges. And yes, I know for all of you that can't see me, I literally do have all of these packets here in front of me and I'm going through them one by one. But the Zarbee's, definitely the best one so far. They are the most palatable to the tongue for when you're sucking a lozenge for any period of time. So that one would highly recommend that. As I said, I only gave that a go now just before I came on air. And then thankfully, Joe Cooney came in to save me. He felt like I had a bit of saving needed and gave me a Fisherman's Friend. And to be quite honest, I actually think the Fisherman's Friend was the best one to date. I mean, I've been trying blackcurrant and licorice. I've been popping cloves, everything. But that one, I think, really did do it. A lot of you are coming in saying about, yeah, of course, the regular teas do dehydrate the vocal cords, but your ginger and lemon, drinking loads of honey and lemon was doing that. Mary in Athlone has advised that I get my hands on a high-grade Manuka honey, saying a spoon a day keeps the hoarse throats away. Well, thanks a million for that, Mary. Very much appreciated. I have been doing that and I will continue to do that going forward. As I said, vocal rest. That was the main one that everyone was telling me that you have to do. And I did. I engaged in vocal rest and it must have worked because when I woke up on Monday morning, you could not hear me. And today I am loud enough for you to hear me on air. That's all from me tonight. The wonderful Joe Cooney is up next with Country Roads until 10 p.m. and I'll be back next week. Fingers crossed, a little less croaky. Until then, good night.